There's a specific kind of silence that tells you everything before a single word is spoken. It's not the comfortable silence you share with someone you love. It's not the awkward pause in a conversation. It's the silence that fills the space where an explanation should be. The silence that confirms your worst fear before anyone has the courage to say it out loud. I learned what that silence sounded like 3 weeks before my wedding, standing in a parking lot with my phone pressed to my ear, waiting for my fiancé to tell me where he really was. It was the 6th time I'd called. The first 5 went straight to voicemail, and with each unanswered ring, my hands shook a little harder. When Marcus finally picked up, he was breathless, like he'd been running. Or like he'd been caught. He asked me what was wrong. And I could hear the edge in his voice, that careful tone people use when they're trying to control a situation that's already spiraling. I asked him where he was. He stuttered. He actually stuttered. This man who'd confidently proposed to me on a beach in Maui, who'd stood in front of both our families and promised to build a life with me, couldn't form a coherent sentence. So I stopped waiting for him to find the words. I told him I knew. And then came that silence. 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. The kind of silence that doesn't need a confession because it already is one. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and you need to understand how I got to that parking lot in the first place. This story doesn't start with Marcus. It starts 15 years earlier, with a girl named Sarah. We met freshman year of college, when the housing office randomly assigned us as roommates, and by some miracle of fate, we actually liked each other. She was the girl who held my hair back when I got food poisoning from the dining hall. The one who helped me move into 3 different apartments, each one slightly less terrible than the last. She knew my coffee order, my Netflix password, and every embarrassing story from my early 20s. Sarah wasn't just my best friend. She was my person. The kind of friendship where you don't need to explain yourself because they already understand. So when Marcus proposed to me on that beach, with the sunset doing all the heavy lifting and a photographer he'd hired hiding behind a palm tree, Sarah was the first person I told. I FaceTimed her from the hotel room, and we screamed and cried together across the phone screen like teenagers. There was never a question about who would stand beside me on my wedding day. Sarah was going to be my maid of honor, and she threw herself into the role like it was her own wedding. 8 months of planning, and she was there for all of it. The bridal shower, the dress fittings, the late-night sessions, addressing 200 invitations by hand, because I'd convinced myself that printed labels weren't personal enough. She talked me down from at least a dozen meltdowns about seating charts and flower arrangements, and whether our signature cocktail should be a Moscow Mule or an old-fashioned. Marcus used to joke that Sarah cared more about our wedding than he did. I'd laugh every time, never imagining how that joke would later feel like a knife. But 3 weeks before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, my phone died. Such a small thing, such a meaningless moment. I was at Sarah's apartment, and I needed to check if the florist had confirmed our delivery time. I asked to borrow her phone, and she handed it over without hesitation. Why wouldn't she? We'd been using each other's phones for years. That's when the notification slid across her screen. Marcus. Can't wait to see you tonight. She'll be at her dress fitting until 8. 8 words. That's all it took. 8 words on a borrowed phone screen that made my entire body go cold. I stood there in Sarah's living room, the phone still in my hand, staring at that notification banner, like if I looked at it long enough, it might rearrange itself into something that made sense. Something innocent. My brain was already working overtime, trying to build explanations that could justify why my fiancé was texting my maid of honor about seeing her tonight. Maybe they were planning a surprise for me. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. But my hands were already shaking, And somewhere deep in my gut, I already knew. You know how people say they had a feeling? This wasn't a feeling. This was certainty arriving before the evidence could catch up. Still, I needed to see it. I needed to be wrong. I opened her messages, and there he was. Marcus. Not buried somewhere down the list, but recent. Very recent. I scrolled up, and the timestamps told a story I didn't want to read. 2 months. They'd been talking for 2 months. Right around the time I'd asked Sarah to be my maid of honor, actually. What a coincidence. The messages weren't even trying to hide what they were. There were conversations about when I'd be out of the house. Logistics coordinated around my own schedule, like I was an obstacle to be managed. Inside jokes that felt like they'd been stolen from me. Plans for nights when I thought Marcus was working late, or Sarah was busy with her own life. And pictures. God, the pictures. I'm not going to describe them because some things you can't unsee, and I'm still trying to forget. The worst part wasn't even the evidence of the affair itself. It was reading how they talked about me. She's at her mom's this weekend. She won't notice if I'm gone for a few hours. She's so stressed about the centerpieces, she's not paying attention to anything else. They'd turned my trust into a tool. Every moment I'd spent confiding in Sarah about wedding stress, about my fears of not being a good enough wife, about my insecurities, she'd been reporting back to him. They'd been using my vulnerability as cover for their betrayal. The closeness I thought we shared, the intimacy I believed was sacred, had become the very thing that made it easier for them to deceive me. I screenshot everything with fingers that barely worked. My whole body felt numb, like I was piloting myself from somewhere far away. I sent the evidence to my own email, methodically, page after page after page. Sarah was in the kitchen making us tea, completely unaware that her entire performance was over. I could hear her humming, actually humming, while I stood in her living room, discovering that my best friend and my fiancé had been sleeping together for half my engagement. When I walked out of her apartment, Sarah called after me, confused. I didn't answer. I didn't explain. I just got in my car and drove, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Marcus had told me that morning he'd be meeting with the caterer at the venue to finalize the menu for our reception. Our reception, the party that was supposed to celebrate our love. I drove there on autopilot, not already knowing what I'd find. He wasn't there. Of course he wasn't there. The venue was empty. The coordinator's office was dark. The parking lot had maybe 3 cars in it, none of them Marcus's. I sat there for a moment, engine still running, trying to decide what hurt more, the affair itself, or the fact that he couldn't even bother to construct a believable lie. Meeting with the caterer. He'd said it so casually that morning, kissing my forehead on his way out the door, telling me he'd handle the menu tastings so I could focus on my dress fitting. My dress fitting, the one he'd texted Sarah about, the one that gave them their window. I called him. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. His voice on the recording sounded so normal, so trustworthy. "Hey, this is Marcus. Leave a message." I didn't. I called again. Voicemail, again, voicemail. My thumb hit the call button like it was a compulsion I couldn't control. 4th time, 5th time. Each unanswered ring was its own answer, really, but I needed to hear him say it. I needed him to have to actually speak the truth out loud instead of hiding behind silence and absence. On the 6th call, he picked up. He was breathless, and there was shuffling in the background, the sound of movement, maybe a door closing. "Hey, babe," he said, and his voice had that careful quality to it, that measured tone people use when they're trying to manage a situation. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" What's going on? As if I were the one disrupting his day, as if I were the problem that needed to be managed. I could feel something breaking loose inside my chest, something that had been holding me together through the screenshots and the silent car ride and the empty parking lot. "Where are you?" I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too flat. "I'm at the venue. We're just wrapping up with the—" "No, you're not," I cut him off. "I'm at the venue right now, Marcus. You're not here. So I'll ask you again. Where are you?" The pause was brief, maybe 2 seconds, but I could hear him recalculating. "Oh, we finished early. I'm heading back to—" "Stop." The word came out harder than I expected. "Just stop." "I know, Marcus. I saw the texts. All of them. Every single message between you and Sarah. Every picture. Every plan you made around my schedule. Every lie you told me so you could be with her. I know." That's when the silence came. Not the confused silence of someone who doesn't understand the accusation. Not the indignant silence of someone who's been wrongly accused. This was the silence of someone whose lie has just collapsed and is frantically trying to figure out which pieces to salvage. I could actually hear him breathing, shallow and quick. "It's not—" he started, then stopped. "I can explain." "Then explain." I was gripping my phone so hard I thought it might crack. "Explain how you've been sleeping with my best friend for 2 months. Explain how you coordinated your affair around my dress fittings and my visits to my mother's house. Explain how you looked me in the eye this morning and lied about where you were going. Explain it, Marcus. I'm listening." More silence, longer this time. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller, deflated. "So, where are you right now?" "That's what you want to ask me?" "Where I am." I laughed, and it sounded wrong, brittle. "I'm in the parking lot of the venue where we're supposed to get married in 3 weeks. Where are you, Marcus? Are you with her right now?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I hung up. Not because I'd heard enough, but because there was nothing left to hear. No explanation he could offer would change what I'd seen. No words could unread those messages or unsee those pictures. I sat in that parking lot for a long time, watching the sun drop lower in the sky, feeling the weight of what came next pressing down on me like physical force. In 3 weeks, 200 people were supposed to watch me marry this man. 200 people who'd bought plane tickets and booked hotels and picked out gifts. My parents had taken out a loan to help pay for this wedding. My mother had cried when she saw me in my dress. And now I had to tell them all that none of it was happening because the 2 people I trusted most in the world had been betraying me in the cruelest way possible. I called my mom first. I kept it short because if I said too much, I'd fall apart, and I couldn't afford to fall apart yet. "The wedding's off. Marcus cheated with Sarah." 3 sentences that dismantled 8 months of planning and 15 years of friendship. My mom went silent, then asked if I was safe, if I was alone, if I needed her to come get me. I told her I was fine, which was a lie, but it was the only answer I could manage. Then I called the venue coordinator and said 6 words I never imagined saying. I need to cancel my wedding. Within 24 hours, I'd made 17 phone calls. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the florist, the DJ. Each conversation was a small violence, having to explain over and over that there would be no wedding, that the deposits were lost, that I understood the cancellation fees. I sent a message to our families through a group text because I couldn't bear to say it individually anymore. The wedding is canceled due to infidelity. Short, clinical, true. I didn't owe anyone more than that. I blocked Marcus on everything, blocked Sarah too, deleted their numbers so I wouldn't be tempted to answer if they tried to reach me from another phone. But they did try. Oh, they tried. Sarah sent emails, long rambling paragraphs that all said the same thing in different ways. It just happened. We never meant to hurt you. I'm so sorry. As if betrayal could be accidental. As if 6 months of deliberate deception was something that just fell into their laps. She showed up at my work on the 3rd day, waiting in the lobby with Starbucks and tears, wanting to explain. Security escorted her out when I refused to see her. She'd used my trust as a weapon, used my wedding as a cover story, used every vulnerable moment I'd shared with her as intelligence to coordinate her affair with my fiancé. And now she wanted me to listen to her explain it, to forgive her because she felt bad. Marcus tried a different approach. He showed up at my apartment, standing outside my door for an hour, calling my name through the wood. He left voicemails saying he'd made a mistake, that he got confused, that what he felt for Sarah wasn't real. Confused. He got confused, as if he'd accidentally fallen into bed with my best friend multiple times over 6 months, as if betrayal was a navigation error instead of a choice he made every single time he lied to my face. I didn't open the door. I didn't respond to the voicemails. Because here's what I understood that they didn't. This wasn't about whether they were sorry. It was about the fact that they'd weaponized my love for them, turned my trust into their opportunity, and destroyed everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me. People kept asking me if I was okay, and I never knew how to answer that. Was I okay? I was breathing. I was functioning. I went to work, paid my bills, fed myself. But something fundamental had broken inside me that I wasn't sure would ever properly heal. It wasn't just about losing Marcus, though that hurt in ways I'm still unpacking. It wasn't even just about losing Sarah, though that loss felt like losing a limb. It was about what their betrayal revealed about the architecture of my entire life. I'd built everything on a foundation of trust, and they'd spent 6 months proving that foundation was made of sand. The worst part, the part that kept me awake at night, was realizing how completely they'd used my love for them against me. Every time I'd confided in Sarah about feeling insecure, about worrying I wasn't enough for Marcus, she'd been sharing those fears with him. Every time I'd told Marcus I trusted him completely, that I knew he'd never hurt me, I was essentially giving him permission to do exactly that. My vulnerability hadn't brought us closer. It had just made me easier to deceive. They'd taken the intimacy I thought we shared and turned it into a tactical advantage. The more I trusted them, the more freedom they had to betray me. I kept thinking about all those nights Sarah and I stayed up late working on wedding details. How she'd helped me pick out table linens and argued with me about whether we needed a photo booth. How invested she seemed, how enthusiastic. And the whole time, she was sleeping with the man I was supposed to marry. She was helping me plan a wedding she knew was built on a lie. That level of deception requires something I don't think I'll ever understand. It requires looking someone in the eye, listening to them talk about their future, and knowing you're actively destroying it. It requires a comfort with betrayal that I don't have the capacity to comprehend. Marcus's betrayal was devastating, but Sarah's felt like a different kind of violation. Marcus and I had been together for 3 years. Sarah and I had been friends for 15. 15 years of birthday parties and breakups and late-night conversations and shared secrets. 15 years of being each other's emergency contact. 15 years of assuming that no matter what else happened, we had each other. And she threw all of it away for what? 6 months with my fiancé? An affair that she had to know would end the moment I found out? She didn't just betray me, she destroyed something I thought was indestructible, and for what turned out to be absolutely nothing. I never got my satisfying confrontation. There was no dramatic scene where I told them both off and walked away feeling vindicated. Real betrayal doesn't work like that. It's messier and quieter and lonelier than the movies make it seem. I just removed them from my life, blocked them, deleted them, moved forward without them. Some people told me I should have confronted them, that I needed closure, but I didn't need to hear their excuses or apologies or justifications. I needed to rebuild my life without them in it, and I couldn't do that while still giving them access to me. The $40,000 wedding that never happened felt like the least of what I lost. I lost my faith in my own judgment. So I lost my ability to trust easily. I lost the version of myself who believed that loving people deeply meant they'd never hurt me deeply. But I also gained something, the knowledge that I could survive the worst betrayal I'd ever experienced. That I could cancel a wedding, lose my 2 favorite people, and still wake up the next morning. She was my maid of honor, until she wasn't. And I was the girl who trusted too much. Until I learned better. It's been 2 years since that day in Sarah's living room, and people still ask me if I've forgiven them. The question always catches me off guard, because it assumes forgiveness is something I owe them, as if their guilt is my responsibility to absolve. I don't spend my time actively hating Marcus or Sarah. I don't fantasize about revenge or wish terrible things would happen to them. But forgiveness? That's not a word I'm ready to use, and I'm not sure I ever will be. Forgiveness implies that what they did is something that can be set aside, moved past, reconciled. And I don't think you can reconcile with people who taught you that closeness is dangerous, that trust is naive, that the people who know you best are the ones best equipped to destroy you. What I've learned instead is that some betrayals are so complete, so thorough in their devastation, that the only healthy response is to walk away and never look back. There's this cultural pressure to forgive, to be the bigger person, to find peace through reconciliation. But sometimes peace doesn't come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from accepting that certain people don't deserve access to you anymore, no matter how much history you share. Sarah had 15 years to be my friend. Marcus had 3 years to be my partner. They chose to spend their time together destroying what I thought we all had. That was their choice. My choice is to build a life where people like that don't get second chances. I think about the girl I was before I saw that notification, and sometimes I miss her. She was softer, more open, quicker to trust, so she believed that loving people meant they'd love you back, with the same integrity you offered them. She thought friendship was sacred and that engagement meant commitment. That girl died in Sarah's living room, and I can't bring her back. But the woman who replaced her is stronger, more careful, and infinitely more selective about who she lets close. Maybe that's a loss. Maybe it's growth. Probably it's both. If you're watching this because something similar happened to you, because someone you trusted used that trust to hurt you, I want you to know that you're not crazy for feeling destroyed by it. Betrayal by a stranger is one thing. Betrayal by someone who knew exactly how much they'd hurt you and did it anyway, that's a different kind of wound. It's not dramatic to need time to heal from it. So it's not weak to struggle with trust afterward. And it's not bitter or unforgiving to decide that some people don't deserve to be in your life anymore, regardless of how long they were there before. The wedding that never happened would have been beautiful. The dress was perfect. The venue was stunning. The flowers were exactly what I'd envisioned. And every single person there would have watched me marry a man who was cheating on me with the woman standing at my side. Every photograph would have been a lie. Every vow would have been meaningless. That notification that destroyed everything, it also saved me from something far worse. A marriage built on deception and a lifetime of wondering why I hadn't seen it coming. So no, I don't regret picking up Sarah's phone that day. I don't regret sending myself those screenshots, or making those 17 phone calls, or canceling that wedding. The only thing I regret is not knowing sooner, but I know now. And that knowledge, painful as it was to gain, taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. Trust is a gift, not an obligation. and some people prove they were never worthy of receiving it in the first place. If this story resonated with you, or if you've experienced betrayal that cut deeper than you thought possible, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share your story if you feel comfortable, or just let me know you've been there. Sometimes, knowing you're not alone in this is enough. And if you want more stories like this, real stories about the moments that break us and how we survive them, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I post every week, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.
If you watched this story to the end and you enjoyed it, give us a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. My name is Mr. Mike, and I write and produce fictional stories like this to entertain you. Every story will be read in the voice of the gender that tells it. See you next time.